Okay everybody, we're back on this rear axle again this morning. Before I left the shop last night, I filled up the bottom of the housing as it sits with some gear oil. That way we could get some oil down to that pinion bearing way down the bottom. And I rotated it a bunch and got some oil circulating. And I like to put it in there and especially get it down to the front. If there was any little bits and pieces of junk left in there, we're just going to dump that out right now, and that helps get any last remaining little bits of whatever out of there, and it lubes the bearings nice. And you know, from all the rotational torque readings we've been taking, this and that was on dry bearings. Now they're lubed, and I got a comment from one guy. He wants to see the rotational torque with the carrier and the ring gear in there. So we're going to set up and do that. But it helps me too, because I can check and see if there's any leaks. And that's been sitting for about 15-16 hours with the oil directly on the seal there. And we don't have any leaks, so we know this is a good one. And we'll get this draining, and then we'll come back and we'll set up, and we'll show that particular YouTube viewer the rotational torque on this. Okay. Okay, we're just going to let that drain for a little bit. And any last little pieces of junk, like I say, should come rolling out of there, if there was anything. Okay, we're going to show that, that viewer there, the rotational torque on this, with the seal in and the ring gear in there. And we'll just run it around a few times. Okay, we got that set pretty good. Okay, I'm gonna try and get you to the reading here. Okay, looks to be about our pointer landed on 28 inch-pounds, and that little extra is due to the ring gear and the seal that's in there. And we set this up originally with dry bearings, brand new bearings, at 19 inch-pounds. And they'll immediately, as you start driving this, they'll immediately, you know, become used bearings, and they'll start to lose that preload just a tiny bit. If you were to run this around the block a few times, have something go bad and have to reset these bearings up, you'd set them up as used bearings, and you'd put a lot less rotational torque on them. Probably be about 6 inch-pounds. So you set everything up on a new rebuild a little bit tight. Believe it or not, the cups and your shims and everything, they'll take a set. They'll seat. It seems crazy, but they kind of seat into the case. Everything kind of loosens up a little bit after just a short time of driving. So when we set this originally, I like to set them anywhere from 12 to 20 inch-pounds. We landed right on 19 inch-pounds, and it's a brand new dry bearing. Now we lubed them a little bit. We put the seal in with a little bit of drag on the carrier. Not much, because that's running on bearings, but just a tiny bit. And that's why we got 28 inch-pounds now. And you know, after you do a few of these, or you know, a bunch of them, you could kind of feel what that should feel like when you're setting it up. You know, it feels kind of notchy, you know, if it's too tight, and if it's too loose, it's just going to spin in there and you'll get up down play. And we don't have any of that here. This is just a nice smooth turning pinion, and after you do so many, you'll get the feel of that. You almost don't even need the inch-pound torque wrench. But it's helpful, let you know exactly where you are. And I always record for the customer what their rear end setup like. That way they got something to reference. But I hope that answers your question about the rotational torque with everything but the axles in there. And like I say, if it needed to be adjusted, shims could be added or removed. But this is a good setup, should last a long time. Everything's set up pretty nice in this one, so we're going to go with it. We're going to work on getting the axles in next. I still don't have the backing plates or the brake system. I don't know exactly when that's coming in, but we'll get some bearings on the axle shafts and get those put in there, and we'll check the end play on the axle shafts next. Now let me get set up for that. Okay, I think you could see inside there I knocked the seal in, and when you look inside your axle housing there's going to be a bunch of different diameters here. But there's one little lip on the inside, and that's what your seal needs to hit up against, so it winds up being in the right place on the axle shaft, which is nice and smooth so you don't get any leaks. Bang that seal in there nice and square, and make sure it's seated all the way in there. It does need to go in pretty far. Don't just tap it in. Make sure you actually hit up against the step in the axle tube. So it goes in, like I say, pretty far, but you'll feel it, stops immediately when it gets where it wants to be. And don't hit it too hard after that or you'll deform it. So the next thing we're going to do is take the old bearings and we're going to press them off the shaft. We're going to put some new ones on, and we'll see what the seal area looks like. Maybe clean that up a little bit if it needs it. And then we'll send the axles in, and and we'll check the end play. Okay, so let me get the bearings pressed on the new shafts and be right back with you. Okay everybody, I've got the bearings pressed off the axle shafts. That surface looks real good. The bearing goes right here up against this. This is where your seal goes, and that's pretty crusty right there. So I've got it inlaid, and we're going to try and polish that up a little bit so that we don't have any leaks. And when I took this apart, we had a lot of gear oil dripping out, and we don't want to have that. We don't want to reproduce that. So we're going to try and clean up that surface a little bit. I've just got some 220 paper here. That's not coming out too bad. Let's take a look at that. It's not terrible. I still got a little bit right there. And I'm gonna get a new piece of paper. That one clogged up pretty fast. Only take a couple minutes and it could save you a whole bunch of trouble as far as leaks go and stuff. So the better you can get the surfaces, the better your seals are going to work, and it's just worth spending a few minutes of time on these to make them right. Okay, so just a few minutes of work there, and that looks like a perfect seal surface. We'll clean up where that hub goes too a little bit. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to get the other axle shaft, do the same thing to it, and meet you back over at the axle. Okay, here's our rear axle bearings, and I think it's easier, and I like to grease them first before I press them on the axle shafts. So I don't like to hand pack bearings too much, so I got this greaser here, and you just put your bearing in there and then press down on it. I just filled it with grease. It's got some air in it, but we'll get it. Okay, and you can see, I think, the grease just comes right up through and completely lubricates that bearing. Try and show you that. You see how it's got grease right up through every part of that bearing. And it's just easier than packing it by hand. It really forces it through there. So I'm going to grease these, and then we'll get them pressed on the shaft, and then we'll put them into the housing. Alright, that's completely greased. That's the fastest way, I think, to grease them. And you got to get the grease inside the bearing. If you just smear it on the outside like this, it does absolutely nothing. It has to be packed in there. So if you pack them by hand, you really got to keep working it in there so that it's completely pushed through the entire bearing. Anyway, hand packing. I did that when I first started, way back when, and this is the fastest way that I know of doing it. So it's just a few dollars for a packer like this, and I think I got this from the Snap-on guy or the Matco guy, but you get them at Summit or Jegs or any of those online places, and it's just you just fill it with grease and pack your bearings. Super handy little gadget. Okay, I'm going to head over to the press. I'm going to get those on there, and we'll come back and put them in the housing. Okay, our housing is ready. We're going to take just a little bit of grease that we got in here, put it on our seal area right there, give our seal a fighting chance. And we're going to send the axle in, being careful on that seal. And we got it engaged with the splines. And then we're going to tap our cup in. Okay, I think you can see that. And what we're going to adjust with our shims is this end play here. We've got a shim pack on both sides, and it allows the cup, the shims in there allow the cup to come out. And what we want is, when we get everything set, it's very rough right now, but when we get everything set, we want 1 to 6 thousandths of end play right there. But we've got to have both axles in. We've got to have some shim packs on there, and you know, I normally like to do that with the backing plate on and everything, and but we don't have the brakes here, and it's kind of holding us up a little bit. But we're going to get the other side in, and then I think we're going to leave the rear axle at that point, and maybe we'll jump on the front axle. So I'll get the other side in, and we'll see when we get the brakes, and we'll finish this up as far as the brake system and the axle shaft end play. Hopefully soon.